I found the violation notice hanging from my garage like somebody had tagged my house with a scarlet letter. Bright orange paper, bold black letters, laminated like they were proud of it. Immediate community compliance required. Real dramatic stuff for 3 tiny oil spots under a beat-up old Honda Civic. I actually laughed at first, because I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe somebody dropped it at the wrong address or some bored teenager was playing HOA police officer over the weekend. Then I saw the amount. $500. $500 because my driveway had what they called automotive fluid contamination visible from community property. Man, the spots were so small I had to crouch down to even see them. I'm talking maybe 3 drops total, no bigger than quarters. But apparently, in the kingdom of Willow Creek Estates, those 3 drops were a threat to civilization itself. Now here's where things get stupid. I didn't even live inside their HOA. My house sat on the corner lot right outside the subdivision entrance. Old ranch-style place built back in the late 70s, long before the developers showed up with their fake Tuscan mailboxes and matching beige SUVs. Technically, my property wasn't under their authority at all, but that didn't stop them. So I called the number listed on the notice and got transferred to the HOA president, a woman named Denise Holloway. And listen, you ever talk to somebody who sounds like they rehearse arguments in the mirror before breakfast? That was Denise. Calm voice, fake professional tone, every sentence polished like she'd been waiting years for the chance to find somebody over concrete stains. She goes, "Your driveway condition negatively impacts neighborhood aesthetic continuity." Aesthetic continuity. Lady, my driveway isn't a Renaissance painting. It's where I park a 15-year-old Honda with 240,000 miles and a check engine light that's basically decorative at this point. I told her flat out, "I'm not part of your HOA." Silence for half a second. Then she hits me with, "Your property remains visible from association-maintained areas, therefore subject to community appearance expectations." That sentence right there told me everything I needed to know about this woman. This wasn't about rules. It was about power. People like Denise don't care about oil stains. They care about obedience. They need everyone around them to quietly nod and comply so they can keep pretending they're running some perfect little kingdom. And the second you question them, they take it personally. I asked her to send me the policy in writing, and I swear her voice got colder. "It's outlined in the community standards packet." Then she hung up on me. Just like that. No explanation, no discussion, click. So now I'm standing in my kitchen holding this orange violation notice, staring out the window at my driveway like it committed a felony, and something in my brain just shifted. Because if there's one thing I've learned about people obsessed with appearances, it's this: their own house is usually built on cracks. Sometimes literal ones. That afternoon I grabbed my phone and took a walk through Willow Creek Estates. And wow, what a magical little fantasy world they had going on in there. Perfect trimmed hedges, identical flower beds, luxury pickup trucks polished like mirrors, every porch decorated like a Pinterest board designed by a suburban dictator. But once I started looking closer, the illusion started falling apart fast. Sidewalk slabs pushed upward from tree roots, spiderweb cracks running across the asphalt roads, drainage stains near curbs where runoff water had been eating away at the pavement for years. Construction crews renovating 2 homes had left muddy tire marks all over the street. One driveway had a giant rust-colored streak under a decorative fountain, honestly way uglier than my oil spots ever were. And then, I found Denise's house. Corner lot near the clubhouse, giant American flag out front, one of those live, laugh, love signs hanging beside the door. Her driveway had a rust stain beneath the mailbox post the size of a pizza pan. No violation notice there, though. Funny how that works. But the real jackpot wasn't the driveways. It was the roads. Willow Creek's internal roads were a disaster hiding under fresh seal coating. Tiny fractures everywhere, the kind that spread underneath the surface before anybody notices the real damage. Delivery trucks, landscaping trailers, garbage pickups. Years of heavy traffic had been slowly chewing those roads apart. And suddenly I realized something beautiful. These people spent so much energy policing appearances, they completely ignored the expensive problems sitting directly under their tires. I stood there near the subdivision entrance watching an Amazon van bounce over a cracked section of pavement, and I remember thinking, you people picked the wrong neighbor to annoy. Because once I saw those roads, the entire game changed. And Denise had absolutely no idea what she'd just started. Now before I keep going, let me explain something about HOAs because a lot of people hear stories like this and immediately think, there's no way that can happen. Oh, it absolutely can. According to standard procedure, most HOA boards survive on one thing: selective enforcement. That's the dirty little secret nobody tells you when you buy into those picture-perfect neighborhoods with the stone entrance signs and matching mailboxes. The rules are usually written broad enough that they can be stretched however the board wants depending on who they like, who complains too much, or who refuses to fall in line. And from a legal perspective, visibility does not automatically equal jurisdiction. Just because somebody can see your property from their neighborhood doesn't magically give them authority over it. If that were true, every HOA in America would be fining people across the street for ugly patio furniture. But here's where people get trapped. Most homeowners panic the second they receive an official-looking violation notice. They assume the board knows the law better than they do, so they pay the fine, apologize, pressure wash the driveway, whatever it takes to make the problem disappear. And honestly, that's usually what HOA bullies count on. This is a psychological trap. Denise didn't start with a warning because she wanted compliance. She started with intimidation because intimidation works faster. It creates this weird social pressure where people feel embarrassed even when they've done nothing wrong. And once you comply once, even unfairly, you teach them they can push further next time. The lesson here is, people obsessed with controlling appearances often ignore structural problems underneath, because fixing appearances is cheap, easy, and visible. Fixing infrastructure? That costs real money. And trust me, Willow Creek was about to learn the difference the hard way. That night I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, a legal pad beside me, and about 63 photos from my little neighborhood walk uploaded into folders. Cracks, stains, uneven sidewalks, standing water near storm drains. I cataloged every single thing like I was building a case for trial. And honestly, part of me still wasn't even angry anymore. I was curious. Because once you stop reacting emotionally to people like Denise, you start noticing patterns. HOA personalities thrive inside systems where nobody questions authority. The second somebody calmly pushes back with paperwork and patience, the entire performance starts wobbling. So Tuesday morning, before work, I started digging through city maintenance codes. Riveting entertainment, I know. But buried inside all that municipal language was something incredibly interesting. The roads inside Willow Creek weren't maintained by the city. They were privately maintained by the HOA itself, which meant the association carried legal responsibility for roadway safety, drainage conditions, and structural upkeep. And according to county regulations, visible pavement deterioration tied to drainage or subsurface instability could trigger mandatory inspection if formally reported by a resident or adjacent property owner. The second I read that, I leaned back in my chair and actually said out loud, "Oh, Denise, you really should have left me alone." Because suddenly my little oil stain problem looked microscopic compared to what I was staring at on my screen. We're talking potential asphalt replacement, drainage excavation, liability exposure if somebody got injured. Real money, not fake HOA money, actual six-figure contractor money. So Wednesday morning, I filed a formal infrastructure concern report with the County Public Works Department. I kept the wording polite and professional, because that's another thing people misunderstand about revenge. The quieter you are, the scarier it becomes. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse anybody of corruption. I simply stated that I had concerns regarding deteriorating roadway conditions within Willow Creek estates that may pose safety risks to residents and adjacent traffic access. Then I attached every photo. Cracked pavement, pooling water, surface fractures, curb separation, sidewalk displacement. Denise's beloved aesthetic continuity suddenly looked like a civil engineering nightmare slideshow. And then, I waited. Thursday afternoon, I came home from work and saw a white county inspection truck parked near the subdivision entrance. Two inspectors in reflective vests were walking the roadway with clipboards while a third guy sprayed fluorescent orange paint beside several cracks in the asphalt. I almost drove past just to avoid looking suspicious, but curiosity got me. So I parked across the street and watched from my porch while they worked. About an hour later, one of the inspectors crouched near a storm drain, poked something with a metal rod, then immediately waved the others over. Not good. Even from a distance, I could tell the mood changed. Suddenly, they weren't casually inspecting anymore. They were measuring, taking photos, making phone calls. At one point, one of them actually shook his head while looking down at the pavement. And that's when I knew this thing had gone way beyond cosmetic damage. Friday morning, Willow Creek woke up to chaos. Bright orange traffic cones lined the main entrance road. Temporary warning signs popped up overnight like mushrooms after rain. Road hazard ahead. Surface failure risk. Temporary traffic control. The county had issued an expedited repair notice requiring immediate remediation of multiple roadway sections due to subsurface deterioration concerns, which is a very professional government way of saying, hey, your roads are starting to fall apart. By noon, construction survey crews were already out there marking sections of pavement with spray paint while residents drove around looking confused and furious. And man, the HOA Facebook group absolutely exploded. One resident posted, "Why are there county inspectors everywhere?" Another wrote, "Does anyone know why they're talking about emergency assessments?" Then came the panic comments. How much is this going to cost? Can HOA dues increase over this? Who reported the roads? Oh, they were unraveling fast now. And the best part? Denise couldn't control it. That's what happens when you drag actual government agencies into your little neighborhood kingdom. Suddenly, her authority meant nothing. She couldn't silence inspectors with passive-aggressive emails or threaten county engineers over driveway aesthetics. Reality had entered the chat. Around 4 that afternoon, my phone rang. Denise. I let it ring twice before answering because, come on, I earned that moment. Her voice sounded completely different now. No polished HOA queen energy. No robotic corporate phrases. Just stress. Pure stress. We may need to discuss your violation situation, she said carefully. Violation situation. Funny how it stopped being community aesthetic enforcement once the repair estimates started rolling in. I leaned against my kitchen counter and said, "Oh, I thought my driveway was a threat to neighborhood integrity." Silence. Then she exhaled hard and lowered her voice. The county inspection has created complications. Complications. Lady, your roads are collapsing like a discount casino parking lot. According to preliminary estimates, she continued, the association may be responsible for substantial roadway remediation costs. There it was. Real fear. And here's the thing. I almost felt bad for some of the residents. Most of them weren't villains. They were just people who bought homes assuming the HOA knew what it was doing. They had no idea the board had apparently spent years obsessing over mailbox colors and lawn height while ignoring infrastructure decay underneath the entire subdivision. But Denise? No. Denise earned every second of this disaster. Because this whole thing started over 3 drops of oil and a power trip. She asked if we could resolve matters privately. That phrase almost made me laugh. Resolve matters privately. As if she hadn't slapped an orange violation notice on my garage like she was issuing sanctions against a hostile nation. So I told her the truth. Denise, my driveway problem costs about $20 and 15 minutes with a pressure washer. Your road problem looks more like $200,000. She didn't respond immediately. I could actually hear construction equipment beeping faintly through her phone. Backup alarms. Diesel engines. The soundtrack of consequences. Then she asked what I wanted. Calmly, very calmly, I laid it out. First, the fine gets withdrawn immediately. Second, I receive written acknowledgement that my property is not under HOA jurisdiction. Third, any future complaints regarding my property must be directed through proper county code enforcement channels instead of unauthorized HOA notices. Simple, clean, professional. Denise tried one last little power move. I'd need board approval for something like that, I said, and I imagine the board will need homeowner approval for a 6-figure special assessment. Dead silence. You could practically hear the blood pressure spike through the phone. She called me back less than 2 hours later. The board agreed. Of course they did. Because by then residents were already receiving emergency notices warning of temporary lane closures and possible dues increases to cover immediate roadway stabilization. People were furious. Contractors were scheduling soil testing. Somebody on Facebook threatened legal action against the HOA board for negligence. The whole pristine Willow Creek image was collapsing in real time. And suddenly my tiny driveway oil spots didn't seem all that important anymore. Monday morning, a certified letter arrived in my mailbox. Official withdrawal of violation. Formal acknowledgement of non-jurisdiction. Written confirmation that no future enforcement action would be taken against my property outside applicable county ordinances. I read the whole thing twice while drinking coffee on my porch, construction crews rumbling in the background like distant thunder. Then, because I'm not unreasonable, I went to Home Depot, rented a pressure washer, and cleaned the driveway that afternoon. Took maybe 15 minutes total. The oil spots vanished almost instantly. That's the part that still makes me laugh. All this chaos, all this money, all this destruction of HOA prestige, over a problem that could have been solved with soap and water if Denise had approached me like a normal human being instead of a suburban dictator with a clipboard addiction. But people drunk on small amounts of power rarely know when to stop pushing. And that's what destroyed Willow Creek. Not the roads, not the inspections. Ego, pure ego. By the following week, sections of their main entrance road were torn apart down to the gravel base. Residents had to drive through steel construction plates just to leave the neighborhood. Giant excavators sat parked beside decorative flower beds like war machines invading Disneyland. And every single time I drove past those orange cones, I couldn't help smiling a little. Because somewhere under all that broken pavement and county paperwork was the ghost of a $500 oil stain violation that should have never existed in the first place. Looking back now, the wildest part of this whole thing isn't even the money. It's how fast small people with tiny authority can create massive disasters just because nobody ever tells them no. That's really what this story was about underneath all the HOA drama and construction chaos. Control, ego, and the dangerous little bubble people build when they spend too much time policing appearances instead of solving actual problems. Because honestly, if Denise had walked over to my house like a normal neighbor and said, "Hey, your car leaked a little oil. Would you mind cleaning it up?" I probably would have grabbed a hose that same afternoon. End of story. No county inspectors. No emergency repairs. No homeowners screaming on Facebook while excavators ripped apart their entrance road. But that's the thing about power-tripping personalities. They confuse cooperation with weakness. They think respect comes from intimidation instead of basic human decency. And eventually that mindset catches up with them. From a legal perspective, this whole situation became a perfect example of why people should actually understand the limits of HOA authority before blindly complying with every threatening letter shoved in their mailbox. A lot of boards operate under the assumption that nobody will challenge them, and honestly, most people don't. They're busy, stressed, working jobs, raising kids, trying to avoid conflict. So they pay the fine and move on. But according to standard procedure, authority only works when it's backed by actual jurisdiction. Otherwise, it's just theater with paperwork. And this is a psychological trap a lot of communities fall into. They become so obsessed with maintaining the illusion of perfection that they ignore the expensive realities underneath. Fresh paint over cracked concrete. Landscaping over drainage issues. Threatening letters instead of infrastructure maintenance. Willow Creek wanted spotless driveways while their roads were literally rotting from underneath them. That irony still cracks me up. The lesson here is simple. If somebody goes out of their way to humiliate you over something minor, don't react emotionally right away. Slow down. Learn the rules better than they do. Most bullies, especially institutional bullies, depend on people staying intimidated and uninformed. The second you respond calmly, strategically, and with documentation, the balance of power shifts fast. And trust me, nothing scares control freaks more than somebody who understands the system as well as they do. I still live in that same house, by the way. My Honda finally died last year. Rest in peace to a real warrior. And these days my driveway stays pretty clean mostly because I learned how ridiculously satisfying pressure washing videos are on YouTube. Willow Creek eventually finished the road repairs after months of construction and a whole lot of angry homeowner meetings. Denise stepped down from the HOA board not long after everything happened. Shocking, I know. Last thing I heard, residents were pushing for financial audits and stricter oversight on future maintenance spending. Funny how fast priorities change once people realize aesthetics don't mean much when the foundation underneath starts collapsing. So yeah, that's the story of how 3 tiny oil spots accidentally triggered a 6-figure suburban meltdown. And honestly, I'd probably just clean the driveway first if I had to do it all over again. But I can't say I regret teaching Willow Creek a lesson they clearly needed.